Thank you for being here. And this is going to be part of our crowd management training program. Tell me a little bit about your background. And first, why don't you state your name and your affiliation and your background, just so the viewers will have a better feel for who you are.
Great. My name is Selen Razon. I am an associate professor of exercise science at Westchester University up in Pennsylvania. And I have a rather, I think, diverse background. I was born in Turkey and then got my psychology education for my bachelor degree actually in France. And then I came to US for my master's in counseling psychology. And then my doctoral was in my counseling psychology education was in University of Miami. So I've been very often for a very long time in Florida. And my doctoral education at Florida State University in sport and exercise psychology. And I've also played college tennis, which is the reason why I think I've been pretty involved with sports throughout my life.
Great. What classes do you teach?
I teach a lot of classes in sport and exercise psychology where I am. So intro to sport and exercise psychology, group dynamics, also research methods in sports sciences, and other related courses like medical terminologies, motor learning, just to name a few, the ones that I'm teaching the most. Yeah.
Okay. And what got you into sports psychology?
Sports psychology. I think I was always very interested in the psychology of performance since I was playing college tennis. And I think a lot of it was, I was just intrigued especially by things like choking under pressure. Like, how do I really know what I'm doing real well? And I can't now because of stress or some real great performance. It's same for them. So I was always very interested in this mental aspect of sport that I think makes a huge difference.
Okay. And that's a nice transition into what we're here to talk about, which is a lot of it dealing with crowds and the psychology of crowds. So, do you see any similarities between sports psychology and those people who put on sporting events and the issues that they face, whether they're frontline staff or whether they're behind the scenes?
Definitely, because first of all, a lot of what we discuss in sports psychology is the psychology of sport, the sport performance, the game itself, but also what's happening around the game, such as the fans and all that. So actually what's surrounding the event itself is not something that we don't discuss in sports psychology. We actually have a course, sports sociology, that very much focuses on what's happening around the sport event. And especially when you talk about a psychology of performance and you think of all these people in sport management that are involved in managing the crowds, managing the fan, and sometimes really going through difficult situations, and they have all these pressures that is placed upon them. I think you're still talking about the psychology of performance, actually, that is maybe not on the field itself, but right around it. So you're tapping into the same kind of, I think, mental preparation, mental performance. A lot of it is really not clinical. It's mental, really, and just mental prep, maybe some self-talk, some things. So definitely I see a lot of overlapping areas between the psychology of sport performance and psychology of the people who are managing that sport performance.
Okay. You have a very unique perspective because you are female in a field where we have a lot of males that work in crowd management and event management. And it's not to say that we don't have women in the area, but and I hope that number keeps growing. But if someone was a crowd manager who was female and she's dealing with these drunk, obnoxious, big guys that are almost twice her size, what strategies, what we often call it mental judo, can be undertaken to help change the situation, alleviate possible concerns, things like that?
Yeah, and I think you made a good point, Gillian, that I'm hoping that there will maybe be even more females present in these settings at sometime soon, because I think that females have unique perspective, unique strength, and innate abilities to offer. Not to say that men they don't, but in a way that they complement each other. And I'll talk some more about this eventually, but it's good to know that there are some of them that are present on the field, and hopefully even more eventually. But you're right, there could be some things that maybe you need to consider when you're dealing with what you're doing as a maybe petite female, and given the fact that there could be some difficult male instigators and all that. So I think some of the things that come in mind, and we talk a lot about this in the psychology of performance anyway, things like fake until you make it. So maybe you don't feel perfectly confident, but you exuberate that confidence. You make as if you are confident. And I've seen plenty of people, again, more in the sport performance field, and a lot of them were female too, that would do a lot of self-talk, like, you got this, you just do it, just whatever is this mantra that works for you, you just repeat it to yourself. Sometimes it's also called cue words. It's just right to the point, real short, but it's the kind of thing where you need that mental pickup and you have it. So anyone can look up for whatever that'll work for them. Either look up or think about it, positive statements, cue words. So I definitely think something like this, but also I think posture is also very important, just like having like a good posture and standing tall up, even though you may be maybe a little bit petite. The way you present yourself, I think, is important. And maybe even having a voice that's not maybe the most delicate, but firm and assertive and more deep if possible, especially when you're making a point and you can be challenged in the position that you are. So it doesn't really hurt to be maybe started real firm and assertive from the very beginning. Maybe instead of remaining silent, really just keeping your grounds. And it's okay to repeat. If you say something and it's not understood or you're being challenged, instead of getting into a big argument, just maybe in a way, it could even be annoying, but I think it gets the point across. Maybe just repeating your point. No, sir, this is how it's supposed to be. And this is, and just you keep saying the same thing. Of course, referring to other authorities and things, but those are some things that cross my mind. But again, a lot of these may not even be very natural to a lot of us, but I completely believe, and I see this in the athletes that I work with as well, it's completely fine to fake things until you make it. So just work on these skills, and the more you'll practice them, the more they'll become a part of you. And then one day you'll realize that, wow, like I'm doing pretty well, dealing with this situation.
Sometimes you do have to fake it in life, and hopefully you end up making it. One of the things that you mentioned is this innate ability, that sometimes women have an ability to sense things or have emotional quantum that is different than male. Do you want to touch upon that? Because maybe it's not the big burly guy who solves the problem. It's the woman who hears what the real issue is and addresses that versus the bluster and everything else.
Right. That's true. And I'm so glad we had this interview, because it made me think and look up as well. And then I really realized really the whole idea of capitalizing on your strengths, and some of the strengths that women have, it's really their innate strengths. So things such as maybe being better communicators, being a little bit better, more diplomatic with things, especially when it comes to dealing with male instigators, instead of being typically like being a male and maybe yelling and pushing and the whole thing. You're really taking it a little easier, but diplomatically, but still firmly, and communicating in the most effective ways. I think women can be really, they do have it more inside them, I think, better conflict management skills. So again, it could be something that they need to tap in, but I do think that they have it a little bit more in them. They're more innately able to do this. And I think that's very, very important. I think it won't necessarily, things will not necessarily get out of control with women, dealing with these situations, if they tap into these inner resources. I do believe in that. And also, I was looking up a little bit, and I realized how actually there are a lot of events apparently recently that even women maybe prefer to be there instead of men. It could be some women events that people who are organizing the event, they're preferring that they're women personnel that's in there. We know today at this day and age that a lot of the time, a lot of the security personnel even are preferred to be women when it comes to searching women. So women have their own place that is unique and that is very much needed. So we will see, I think, more and more women. And I think the more they tap into their own resources, the better they'll do, because they are in need and they will be more in need, I think, in the days to come.
Over the years, we have tried peer security. We've tried grandmothers. We've tried, a priest. Others, with the idea being that no matter how drunk you are, you're not going to tee off on certain individuals like a grandmother. So sometimes it's understanding the crowd and the dynamics, and then trying to change the narrative, so to speak, instead of having people necessarily all dressed up in uniform and having a huge police presence. Sometimes it's having that presence, but also having some women, some people of different ages, the whole potpourri. So that way everyone has someone they might be able to relate to. I think
Excellent idea. Since I haven't thought about what you said, priest, or grandmother, like different people who can maybe mingle with the crowds even better without putting this pressure of authority on them, which also I think is an amazing idea for behavioral profiling anyway, when there are people that you don't even know that they are security. So those are actually amazing ideas that I haven't thought about. Great point.
Yeah, it's we're an evolving field. And as such, we learn from our mistakes and we try to correct them. And part of that is trying to address the frontline staff. So what advice would you give to women or men who are working as ushers, ticket takers, security, to help them do their job better and become the best possible crowd managers? And this is tough because a lot of venues have their own policies. And each venue could have different policies, but a lot of them are pretty similar in terms of you have rules and regulations or policies and procedures. And you can, as someone who's a crowd manager, say, look, I would love to do that, but I cannot do that because the policy says X or Y. And so that's a way to try deflecting that you're not the bad person. You're just there to do your job, and please let me do my job, because then it'll help you with your enjoyment of the event. So that kind of stuff can work. But is there any specific advice that you would give as to if you had the ability to create your perfect world for the events, that way they're as safe as possible?
I actually, on this question, I would go directly and think about some of the advices that we normally even give to more general sense of managers in terms of how they excel better at their job and at their job performance. Because you're right, everywhere you go you'll have procedures and protocols and enough written things in place. So the question is really, what do you do to work around this, and sometimes despite these, to really come across healthy and in good stance. So some things that I'll throw out will be more general, and then I'm going to go into the two more specific ones that are, I think, really important and we may neglect it sometimes. So things like always, listening before speaking. I think all of us, when we're managing, especially when it comes to crowds and big events, it's easy to fall in this pitfall of, I have this to say and I can't really listen. I don't have time. I think it always helps in a such way to listen and then to talk. Of course, always taking lessons. So if something didn't really go well, what's the best lesson I can take out of this that maybe, and I think even in situations where we feel really right about it, a lot of the time we do have lessons to take out of that situation. I would always think about this. I've seen, especially in managers, this imposter syndrome a lot of the time, I've done really well, or I'm given these responsibilities, but I don't really deserve it. So really coming to a peace with the fact that you're good enough. So you're given this responsibility because you'll do really well at it. So just, go with your head on, to tackle the issues, because you are the guy or the girl, for the situation. So really assuming the responsibility and being proud of where you are, of course, in a humble way. And then, of course, getting to know your staff. So because I think, and this is the last two things that I was thinking. First, delegating, which I think happens a lot with knowing well your staff. I don't think that a manager of crowd or any kind of, when you're trying to manage any situation, without delegating some time to people who are just really good as well, probably you would feel very overwhelmed. And I don't even know you'd be able to really get at 100% of your potential. So you make sure that you have a good team, you know them real well, and then you delegate as needed. I think it's super important. And another thing that we all neglect sometimes, and I think managers need it even more because they manage so many and such difficult situations sometimes, and managing crowds is one of the most difficult ones, actually. And this is a little cheesy and we keep repeating it, but it's so true. Self-care. So you are doing a job that's not exactly, not to say that this is anything bad, but putting together software, doing coding, whatever you're dealing with people. It can get really, really difficult, sometimes less difficult, sometimes more difficult. I think that they have to take care of themselves, and it could be, I don't know, every week they have an outing that maybe they feel really great about doing this, and they have the social, spiritual, whatever thing that gives meaning to their lives, or just help them de-stress. Like it could be daily meditation, 10 minutes closing your eyes, fitness, gymnast, whatever that works for you. That self-care, I think, should be something that's consistent, that's frequent, that's almost like a routine. That, okay, I had a tough day today, and crowds managers and usher, it's nothing easy. So I had a tough day, regardless of how I feel about it. I'm just going to do a little bit of de-stressing time right now. That's my time. It could be 10 minutes, it could be 15 minutes, but we have to be on top of our self-care. I believe in this 100%, and research says the same.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we actually really advocate in this industry, is to get a good night's sleep before you're working a game, because you might be on your feet for a number of hours. Wear comfortable shoes, have comfortable clothing, make sure you eat and you drink and hydrate. And so self-care is important for all of the crowd managers out there to be able to take care of themselves, because if they're not in good shape, they can't do as good of a job.
Exactly. Very true. And sleep, Gil, and I think everything you said are very, very important. Sleep is this one area, to be honest with you, that in my life, I wasn't even doing very well up until recently. And now that I'm doing much better, maybe for the last few months, you do feel completely differently if you get this good sleep that you're supposed to get each night. I cannot imagine dealing with crowds and difficult situations and events really without getting the sleep that I was supposed to get. Everything you said is super important, but I see a lot of people neglecting the sleep and sometimes even the nutrition part. Okay, you're eating, but what are you eating? Are you eating things that are giving you energy, or maybe that are making you feel sluggish, or maybe even depressed, or spiking your sugar levels up? So these are super, super important points that we tend to neglect in the craziness of life, and we should not neglect.
That's great advice. Any last words for these wonderful crowd managers out there, the people on the front lines, whether they're ushers or ticket takers or security personnel or people working in concession stands, whoever they might be?
I can really, the one word that I can think is really thank you, because their job is really not easy. We need them to feel safe and secure, and for the event to flow effortlessly. I myself, I played tennis for several years. I know a little, and I've been in a lot of games and things. I always admired. It's really something with a lot of moving parts, and unless you're on top of it the whole time, it's nothing easy to manage. So good for them. They're doing a great job, and it's okay even if there are days that they don't feel like they've done it their best, because this is the nature of the job. I say go for it, just do it. And again, I'm going to repeat the same thing. Take care of yourself in meanwhile, because if you're not well, these crowds will not be managed. So you have to be on top of you first, and then on them second.
Sounds great. That's wonderful advice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and have a wonderful semester.